Kinda sounds like pebbles dropping on a wooden board, doesn't it? This is the Loki 65. In Norse mythology or the Marvel Universe, whichever you resonate with, Loki is the shape-shifting trickster god of mischief. Like the mythological or Marvel character, the keyboard version of the Loki 65 also does the same thing. It's a premium polycarbonate design with multiple mounting options that creates for a very dynamic keyboard. Wait, did I just say premium polycarbonate? How does premium and plastic go together in the same sentence? Well, it depends on how you produce this thing. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Scott K. So today we're going to be talking about this guy. Actually no, we're going to be talking about his key brother. Not him either. The keyboard twin, the Loki 65. As mentioned before, the Loki 65 is interesting. It was designed to be able to host multiple different mounting options. Top mount, top burger mount, gasket mount. But the caveat to this is that regardless of the mounting you choose, every single one of them has a nice flex to it. How did they do this? Top mounts sound good, but they don't flex. Well, that's what we'll be seeing today. And depending on which mounting style you choose, the Loki 65 sounds like little pebbles dropping on a wooden xylophone. So let's get started. So the Loki 65 comes in a pretty standard black box with the Loki 65 designation. On the top, you're greeted by this familiar helmet, typical of what you see Loki wear in both the mythology as well as the Marvel universe. Inside, you're greeted by the typical components to build a keyboard. You get some hardware and a small hex tool. Then the feet and some O-rings. O-rings you say? Well, I'll show you what they do later. Then you get some pour-on gaskets for the gasket mounting, then a whole slew of different foams, an Fr4 plate. Mine also came with the aluminum plate as well, which is actually already installed on the keyboard. Finally, you got the PCB. Now, under all the components, you got the case. And what a nice case it is. So remember what I said about this being made of plastic? It's true, it's made of nice polycarbonate. However, what is interesting is that unlike some cheaper boards that use injection molding or casting techniques to make this, the Loki is actually made in the same CNC process as aluminum keyboards. So instead of making like a mold and pouring melted plastic into it to make the case, right? The Loki actually starts off as a block of solid polycarbonate. Then the CNC machine will use a bit to literally carve into it and carve it into a case of the shape of the keyboard case. This is exactly how the aluminum boards are also made as well. What comes out from this is pretty much a thicker, more solid, higher quality result. It gives the board more heft, as well as a sound profile that doesn't sound like, cheaper thin plastics. The case also features a nice bead blasted brass weight underneath with the same Loki helmet logo that you have found on the box as well. Wait, there's more! The top of the case also has a nice rune adornment to add a little bit of pizzazz to the look. From what I understand, there's different accessories to this, so you could actually customize this as well. Now, my sample came with pre-installed with the aluminum plate and the top mount configuration. It's a nice blue anodized plate, and overall, with the frosted polycarb case, it looks pretty fantastic. Let me show you a quick trick about this plate. It's actually cut in such a way that the tab actually looks like a leaf spring. So take a look at this. It flexes. This thing flexes actually pretty good, even in the top mount configuration. So let's take a closer look and see what the trick is all about. So there's essentially a cut within the tab with a little hole in the middle that allows this plate to be top mounted. The extra cutout in the tab allows the plate to flex much easier as well. This is the reason why the Loki 65 can flex so well even in the top mount configuration. It's not the first time you're seeing something like this in a keyboard, but overall, it is executed pretty nicely here. Because the Loki 65 has so many different configurations, I'll go over some of these components quickly so that we could jump onto the different sounds and feels of this board under the different configurations. So let's take a quick look at the Fr4 plate. Overall, nice design, but pretty standard here. It has a nice consistent helmet logo going on here as well. And the trick tabs you saw in the aluminum also is applicable to the Fr4 as well. The PCB is a very highly glossed black color with south-facing hot swap sockets. There's no per key RGB here, but it definitely has some underglow. I will actually show you that later. What is interesting is that this PCB has that tofu effect. What I mean by that is that while most of the sockets are actually south-facing, a few around the USB port is actually north-facing. This was done so that it's able to fit the USB port here. As usual, the standard KO hot swap sockets below. It's also programmable with VIA or QMK. Now, a quick look at the foam. The Loki comes with two different types of case foams. One is slightly thicker. Then you also get another one that is also slightly thinner. Then you got the under PCB foam. Then the plate foam. As you can notice, there is no PE foam here, and the foam itself is a little bit denser and harder than what I typically see. But what is also interesting is that I built this keyboard in multiple different configurations, and mostly, this can actually do without any foam. That is totally up to you in terms of how you want to shape the sound, but this keyboard is absolutely not dependent on the foam to make good noise. Now, before we jump into the actual build, a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is an online service that helps you print PCBs, do 3D printing, or even CNC machining. If you're an aspiring keyboard designer or whatever else designer, you can take your design and simply upload it to get something made quick. Or, if you have the source code for a PCB that you already have and you need a replacement, you can also get that done as well. They can handle all types of PCBs from your simple single layer designs to multi-layer stacks. Beyond PCBs, if you want to try making your own case, PCBWay can machine that as well. Now, a very exciting new service that PCBWay offers, OEM. Instead of just making a single component, you can actually task PCBWay to be an OEM manufacturer and make the whole thing. They can do anything from PCBs to CNC cases to even assembly. And using global manufacturing, they can offer very competitive prices. Is there a keyboard on the horizon? Well, check out OEM at PCBWay. But for my build, I actually like the sound profile best with the plate foam for the aluminum plate and just one of the thin case foams. Now, given that this is a PC case, and for other PC cases for that matter, don't go too crazy when you're tightening the screws. While the Loki does have metal hardware, right? If you go Hawk smash with this, with your screwdriver on the PC cases, you have a high chance of stress cracking it. So be more gentle with this. It's not, like the aluminum ones. Plus, the Loki actually sounds nicer if you don't go crazy tight on the case as well. For switches, I used the Wuque onions. Overall, very nice and deep, long pole switches with a nice smooth typing profile. The color is a little weird, but you know what? They're still very nice switches overall. For stabs, I used the Owlstabs lubed with the Krytox 205. Time for keycaps. I thought, what better to match to a transparent PC case than some nice and clean black on white keycaps. Specifically, I chose the Mochi keycap set from Osume. As I mentioned in some previous videos, Osume makes nice and thick PBT dice-up caps with very fun color schemes, usually very subtle colors. They also have such nice and cute packaging and graphics, so you can't really go wrong with this. I guess I'm like a sucker for this, so. Since I used the novelties as well, this is how it turned out. Nice and clean, but with a nice pop of color for a little bit more fun. I'm sure you've been waiting for this, but hey, you know what? Let's get to it. Let's check out the flex. Isn't this pretty nice for a top mount? A top mount that flexes as well as a gasket. I don't think you could go wrong with that at all. Even though the Loki doesn't use a daughter board, the designer made sure to put enough clearance for the USB port to move around without any issues. So even when you push it down and it actually flexes up and down, there's enough clearance for it to not get stuck at the USB port. So now enough talking and let's take this for a quick sound test, shall we? What did you think? In my opinion, it has a nice and classic top mount sound and then warmth from the PC case. Usually plastic cases sound warmer than metal. So in this configuration, you got a good sound with good feel, so not a bad combo at all. Now let's try the burger mounting. So burger mounting is essentially isolation mounting the plate onto the top case. You first place the provided silicone O-ring onto the lower case like this, then you place the plate on top. Then you insert another silicone ring onto the screw itself and you put the whole thing together like this. Essentially, what you're doing is you're sandwiching the plate between the two silicone O-rings so there is no hard mounting point at all. Now, let's take this guy for a quick typing test, shall we? Now, that is similar to the standard top mount, but has a nice pop and a little bit more of that pebbly sound coming from the silicone O-rings. It's like my O-ring mounted tofu, but essentially it's like upside down. I think this is actually my favorite configuration. Finally, let's explore the gasket bounds. What is interesting about the Loki is that the board comes with two different sets of gaskets. One has adhesive on it and the other one doesn't. The ones for the top case is actually designed to stick, and this is the one with adhesive, and the one from the bottom case just kinda sits here like this. The idea was to make the Loki easy to go back and forth from different mounting styles. As expected from gasket mounting, it does have a nice flex here as well. I feel overall, both the top mount and the gasket mount has similar amounts of flex. So then what about the sound? What does a gasket mounted Loki sound like? As expected, it has that more muted, isolated gasket mounted sound. If this is what you're looking for, you certainly can do this as well. I don't think there's really a bad configuration out of these three, honestly. So given all this, what is my thought of the Loki 65? The Loki 65 is a refreshing ode to the classic keyboard design. In the time where most keyboard sound is heavily shaped by the usage of various foams nowadays, the Loki 65 is a nice alternative. The case is designed not to really depend too much on foam. It has a classic top mount sound, but with the updated feel. It's more comfortable. If you want to go gasket mount for that muted sound, you definitely can do that as well. Oh, it also has this cool underglow that you could also change the color through VIA, so you could set it to whatever color you want. Overall, if you're a top mount keyboard connoisseur but want a softer typing feel, or you want something that doesn't have such a foamy sound characteristic and sounds a little bit more classic, or if you want a nice PC case for its warmer sound profile, then the Loki 65 is something you should consider taking a look at. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and I'll have more content for you in the future. Thanks.